Agnes Moorehead in Johnny Belinda, Warner Brothers. Gene Simmons in Hamlet. J. Arthur Rank, Two Cities Film, Universal International, British. Claire Trevor in Key Largo, Warner Brothers. And the winner, ladies and gentlemen, the winner is Claire Trevor.
In 1987, a mysterious letter was found in Claire Trevor's dressing room. Inside were secrets about Hollywood's darkest days, violent fights with Humphrey Bogart, an affair that ended in tragedy, and a shocking feud that almost destroyed her career. Today, we're finally revealing what the Queen of Film Noir was hiding, and the devastating truth that made her walk away from it all. Claire Trevor was born Claire Wemlinger on March 8, 1910, though some records suggest it may have been 1909. She was the only child of Noel Wemlinger and Benjamina Edith Morrison. Her father was a French immigrant who worked as a merchant tailor on Fifth Avenue. Her mother was Irish, born in Belfast in 1877. Benjamina came to the United States in 1891 with her family, and later trained as a dressmaker. She married Noel in 1902, and 8 years later, they welcomed Claire into the world. Growing up in Brooklyn's Bensonhurst neighborhood, Trevor was surrounded by two distinct cultural influences. Her father brought French refinement, while her mother had a sharp Irish wit. These influences shaped her personality, and later helped her bring depth to her acting. She showed an early interest in the arts and loved performing in school and church plays. But at first, she wanted to be a painter, not an actress. Her father's tailoring business did well, and the family's financial situation improved. They moved to Larchmont, New York, an affluent suburb in Westchester County. The new environment gave Trevor better educational opportunities and a more comfortable life. But it didn't change her down-to-earth nature. She stayed the same, a quality that would later make her well-liked among colleagues and fans. At Mamaroneck High School, Trevor acted in school plays just for fun. In 1928, she entered a speaking contest and won $15. It wasn't much, but it gave her confidence. After graduating, she enrolled at Columbia University to study painting, still thinking art would be her future. But something changed. The more time she spent around the arts, the more she realized her true passion wasn't on canvas. It was on stage. Encouraged by friends and mentors who saw her potential, Trevor decided to pursue acting. She left Columbia and enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. There, she focused on diction and memorization, skills that would serve her well later in her career. But she didn't stay long. After 6 months, she decided experience would teach her more than a classroom could. She left school and joined stock theater companies to learn by doing. Her first professional stage roles came in 1929 with Robert Henderson's Repertory Players at the Theater Festival in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She took part in Antigone, played a role in Lady Windermere's Fan, and performed in Chekhov's The Seagull. These early performances gave her valuable experience in front of an audience. By 1931, she had moved on to the Hampton Players in Southampton, Long Island. The pay was just $5 a week, plus room and board. At the end of the season, the cast split any profits. It wasn't much, but she didn't mind. She later called this time one of the happiest of her life. The small theater company gave her the chance to take on different roles and learn from fellow actors. Claire Trevor's rise to stardom began on Broadway in 1932 with Whistling in the Dark. The play, a comedic thriller, opened on January 19th at the Ethel Barrymore Theater in New York. It was a major success, running for a year before going on a national tour. Trevor starred alongside Edward Arnold, and critics praised her ability to hold her own among experienced actors. This role not only proved her talent, but also set the stage for what was to come. Before Broadway, Trevor had already spent years training. She performed in stock theater companies and studied at Columbia University and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. But Whistling in the Dark changed everything. When the play reached Los Angeles, Hollywood scouts took notice. Trevor loved the stage and hesitated to leave it behind, but the Great Depression made steady theater work uncertain. In 1933, she signed a 5-year contract with Fox Studios. That decision launched a film career that would last over 7 decades. Her Hollywood debut came quickly. In 1933, she starred in Jimmy and Sally, a pre-code comedy drama produced by Fox Studios. She had been brought in to replace Sally Eilers, but she made the role her own. The film, directed by James Tinling, followed the complicated romance between a self-centered publicist and his devoted secretary. Trevor's performance stood out for its natural charm and emotional depth. From that moment, her career took off. Between 1933 and 1938, she appeared in 29 films, playing strong-willed women or bad girls who had more depth than they first appeared to. Many of these were lower-budget B-movies, but Trevor always stood out. Her husky voice and expressive acting style made her unforgettable. She wasn't just another Hollywood newcomer. She was a presence on screen. Then came Dead End in 1937. The film, directed by William Wyler, was based on a Broadway play and set in the slums of New York. Trevor played Francie, a woman who had turned to prostitution out of desperation. She was on screen for less than 5 minutes, but her performance was devastating. In one of the film's most heartbreaking scenes, she reunites with Humphrey Bogart's character, only to be rejected because of what she had become. Audiences felt her pain. Even in such a short time, she made a lasting impact. The performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Dead End was a turning point. The film was a critical success, receiving 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. For Trevor, it changed everything. She was no longer just a reliable performer in B-movies. She had proven she could deliver award-worthy performances, even in a brief but powerful role. It also led to more collaborations with major directors and actors, including several films with Bogart. Claire Trevor's journey to stardom began with Stagecoach in 1939. She played Dallas, a dance hall girl cast out by society, but full of depth and quiet strength. Hollywood had a habit of portraying women like her in one-dimensional ways, but Trevor gave Dallas dignity. Her performance made the character feel real, not just a side note in John Wayne's story. Their romance in the film added emotional weight, making Stagecoach more than just an action-packed Western. John Ford directed the film, and it changed the genre forever. It was gritty, fast-paced, and visually striking. Even Orson Welles studied it, watching it over 40 times while preparing for Citizen Kane. Trevor's name appeared above John Wayne's in the credits, a sign of how much Hollywood already respected her by 1939. The film's success launched both their careers, proving Trevor could hold her own as a leading lady. While her film career took off, Trevor found another way to stay in the spotlight. In the late 1930s, she became a regular on radio, starring in popular shows like Big Town and the Old Gold Don Ameche Show. Radio was a dominant form of entertainment, and these roles kept her voice in millions of homes. On Big Town, she played Lorelei Kilbourne, a sharp and determined reporter working in a field dominated by men. Her chemistry with Edward G. Robinson made the show one of the most popular dramas of its time. Meanwhile, on the Old Gold Don Ameche Show, she performed in adaptations of plays by Mark Hellinger, showing off her dramatic range. By the 1940s, Hollywood was changing. Film noir was on the rise, and Trevor was a perfect fit. She had the screen presence, the voice, and the ability to play women who were both vulnerable and dangerous. In Street of Chance, 1942, she played Ruth Dillon, a femme fatale caught in a world of crime and deception. It wasn't her most famous role, but it introduced audiences to the side of her that would define the next stage of her career. Her breakthrough in noir came with Murder, My Sweet in 1944. She played Helen Grail, a glamorous and manipulative woman opposite Dick Powell's Philip Marlowe. The film, based on Raymond Chandler's Farewell, My Lovely, became a classic of the genre. Trevor's character was beautiful but ruthless, and she played her with an icy charm that made her unforgettable. This performance earned her the title Queen of Noir, and she went on to star in several more crime dramas, each one proving she could command the screen with a single look. Then came Key Largo in 1948, the film that won her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Directed by John Huston and starring Humphrey Bogart and Edward G. Robinson, it was one of the defining films of the noir era. Trevor played Gay Dawn, a former nightclub singer trapped in an abusive relationship with Robinson's gangster, Johnny Rocco. One of the most powerful scenes in the film had Rocco forcing Gay to sing Moanin' Low in exchange for a drink. She tried, but her voice cracked with desperation. The scene was painful to watch, and that was exactly the point. Huston filmed it without rehearsals to make sure it felt raw and real. Trevor's performance in that moment was unforgettable, and it secured her place in Hollywood history. By the time the 1950s arrived, Trevor had done it all. She had starred in groundbreaking westerns, ruled radio, and become a legend in film noir. Her characters were never just there to fill space. They had depth, strength, and complexity. Still, Hollywood had a habit of typecasting her. Despite coming from a wealthy, cultured background, she was often cast as hard-boiled blondes and dangerous women. But rather than fight against it, Trevor leaned into those roles, adding layers that made them unforgettable. She once admitted that acting was just a job to her, but her performances told a different story. She made even the most cynical characters feel human, giving them a depth that kept audiences captivated. Claire Trevor's career took a new direction in the 1950s when she moved into television, proving she could adapt to any medium. In 1956, she won an Emmy for her performance in Dodsworth, a live television adaptation of Sinclair Lewis's novel. She played Fran Dodsworth, the self-absorbed wife of the main character, played by Frederick March. The production aired as part of NBC's Producers Showcase, a series known for bringing Broadway-style performances to television. Live television was intense. There were no second takes. Every moment had to be perfect. Trevor's ability to deliver a complex and emotional performance in real time impressed audiences and critics. Winning the Emmy for Best Live Television Performance by an Actress was a huge achievement. It proved she could handle the pressure of live drama just as well as she had mastered film. Today, both her Emmy and her Academy Award for Key Largo, 1948, are displayed at the Claire Trevor School of the Arts at the University of California, Irvine, a reminder of her lasting impact. As television became more popular, Trevor appeared in some of the biggest shows of the era. She took on dramatic roles in Playhouse 90, one of the most respected anthology series on television. She starred in episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, where her intensity added to the suspense. She also appeared in Wagon Train, returning to the Western genre that had shaped her early film career. Television gave her the chance to explore different kinds of roles. For an actress known for playing tough, sharp-witted women in film noir, this was an opportunity to prove she had even more range. In 1959, she played one of the most chilling roles of her career. In Ma Barker's Killer Brood, she portrayed the infamous crime matriarch Ma Barker, a woman who led her sons on a violent crime spree in the 1930s. Historians still debate how much control the real Ma Barker had over her sons, but the film leaned into the legend. Trevor played her as a ruthless mastermind, a woman who was both a mother and a cold-blooded criminal. Her performance was intense and theatrical, making the character larger than life. It was a bold choice for an actress who had already proven she could dominate the screen in any role. Even as she acted less in later years, Trevor never fully left the industry. She guest-starred in Murder, she wrote, sharing scenes with Angela Lansbury in one of television's most popular mystery shows. Her final film role came in 1982 in Kiss Me Goodbye, a romantic comedy starring Sally Field, James Caan, and Jeff Bridges. She played Charlotte, bringing warmth and experience to a light-hearted story. The movie received mixed reviews, but it was a fitting farewell to a career that had lasted more than 5 decades. Claire Trevor's life was filled with love, loss, and resilience. She married 3 times, and each marriage shaped a different part of her journey. Her first husband was Clark Andrews, a producer and director of her radio show. They married in 1938, but their relationship struggled under the weight of professional pressures and personal differences. After 4 years, they divorced in 1942. In 1943, Trevor married Navy Lieutenant Silos William Dunsmore, a World War II veteran. That same year, she gave birth to her only child, Charles Dunsmore Bren. Becoming a mother was one of the greatest joys of her life, but the marriage did not last. By 1947, she and Dunsmore had divorced. Despite the separation, Charles remained at the center of her world. The following year, she married Hollywood producer Milton Bren. This was the marriage that truly lasted, bringing stability and happiness for over 3 decades. Milton had 2 sons from a previous marriage, Donald and Peter Bren, and Trevor embraced them as her own. Donald later became a billionaire real estate developer, but in their home, family always came before fame or fortune. Trevor and Milton lived in Newport Beach, where they created a life that was glamorous yet deeply grounded in love and companionship. Then came an unimaginable tragedy. On September 25, 1978, her son Charles was on PSA Flight 182 when it collided mid-air with a Cessna over San Diego. The crash killed all 137 people on board, as well as 7 on the ground, making it one of the deadliest aviation disasters in U.S. history. Trevor was devastated. Charles had taken Milton's last name, and the bond between them had been incredibly strong. Just over a year later, in 1979, Milton Bren died from a brain tumor. Losing both her son and husband in such a short time left her shattered. After Milton's death, she found it difficult to stay in Newport Beach. She once described it as a place for couples, a place where she no longer belonged. In 1980, she sold her home and moved back to New York City, hoping to find comfort in the city where she had been born. She lived in a Fifth Avenue apartment, occasionally taking acting roles, but Hollywood no longer felt like her world. By the mid-1980s, she returned to California for good, choosing a quieter life focused on philanthropy and supporting young artists. Claire Trevor spent 7 decades in Hollywood, starring in more than 60 films and earning both an Academy Award and an Emmy. But in 1987, when she retired from acting, she turned her attention to something just as meaningful. She wanted to give back to the world that had shaped her, so she dedicated the rest of her life to supporting young artists. She believed creativity wasn't just a talent people were born with. It was something that had to be nurtured, and she wanted to make sure the next generation had the opportunities they needed to grow. Her commitment to the arts wasn't just about writing checks or making appearances. She spent her time at the University of California, Irvine, where she mentored students at the School of the Arts. She sat in on rehearsals, watched performances, and shared stories from her years in Hollywood. She knew what it took to succeed, and she wanted to pass that knowledge on. Her presence became a source of encouragement for students who were just beginning to find their voices. People who knew her said she found real joy in seeing young artists develop their craft. She didn't just support their dreams, she helped make them possible. After her passing in 2000, her legacy became something even greater. That same year, the University of California, Irvine renamed its School of the Arts in her honor, ensuring that her name would be tied to the creative world forever. This tribute was made possible by her stepson, Donald Bren, a well-known philanthropist and chairman of the Irvine Company, who donated $10 million to the school. It wasn't just a gesture of respect for Trevor's career, it was a continuation of the work she had started, a way to give young artists the tools they needed to succeed. That donation led to major improvements across the school. The Claire Trevor Theater was renovated, providing students with a state-of-the-art space for performances. Other departments, including drama, music, art, and dance, benefited from upgrades that turned the school into a nationally recognized leader in arts education. Today, more than 800 undergraduate and graduate students pass through its doors each year, training in facilities that include digital arts labs, concert halls, and galleries. The school also runs community outreach programs, making sure that arts education is accessible to people beyond the university. But Trevor's influence wasn't just about buildings or financial contributions. Even in her later years, she remained deeply involved in mentoring young talent. She believed the arts weren't just about entertainment. They taught people to think differently, to see the world in new ways, and to connect with others on a deeper level. She spoke often about the power of imagination, calling it an essential part of a happy life. At UCI, she became a familiar face at student performances, always eager to offer advice and encouragement. Many young actors, musicians, and artists benefited from her insights, learning directly from someone who had worked alongside Hollywood legends like Humphrey Bogart and John Wayne. Her contributions didn't go unnoticed. In 2011, UCI honored her with the Claire Trevor Commemorative Star on its Walk of Fame, a permanent reminder of her devotion to the arts. But her real legacy isn't just in a name or a plaque. It's in the students who continue to grow within the school she helped shape. The Claire Trevor School of the Arts still reflects her values, offering mentorship programs that connect students with professionals, just as she once did. Meanwhile, Claire Trevor built her career in a time when Hollywood was dominated by men. Sexism was everywhere. Women were often judged more for their looks than their talent, and many were stuck playing secondary roles. But Trevor refused to let the industry define her. She carried herself with professionalism and never backed down when it came to standing up for herself. One of her biggest challenges came in Stagecoach, 1939. Directed by John Ford, the film was a turning point for Westerns, and Trevor had one of the most complex roles. She played Dallas, a prostitute shunned by society but full of kindness and strength. It was rare for a female character in the 1930s to have this much depth. The role pushed against the expectations of the time and required her to bring a mix of vulnerability and resilience to the screen. She handled it flawlessly. Critics praised her performance, and audiences saw her as more than just another Hollywood actress. She had presence, she had skill, and she could hold her own next to any male star. That respect extended beyond Stagecoach. Over the years, she worked with some of Hollywood's biggest names, including John Wayne and Edward G. Robinson. But it was her collaborations with Humphrey Bogart that stood out the most. They shared the screen in Dead End, 1937, and Key Largo, 1948, and their chemistry was undeniable. In Dead End, she played a streetwalker opposite Bogart's gangster. The film's gritty, emotional tone required both actors to dig deep, and that intensity sometimes carried over off-screen. They had different personalities and occasionally clashed, but that tension only made their performances stronger. 11 years later, in Key Largo, their dynamic was even more electrifying. Trevor played Gay Dawn, an alcoholic trapped in a toxic relationship with a criminal boss. She had to balance desperation, fear, and a sliver of hope all at once. Her scenes with Bogart were filled with quiet tension and raw emotion. Despite their occasional disagreements, Trevor respected Bogart's talent. She later admitted that he had a sharp sense of humor that often lightened the mood on set. They weren't the kind of co-stars who became lifelong friends, but they understood each other as actors. Trevor also had strong opinions about the kinds of roles she wanted. She wasn't afraid to turn down parts that didn't align with her values. One of the biggest examples came in 1949, when she refused to star in The Woman on Pier 13, originally titled I Married a Communist. The film was pure anti-communist propaganda, made during the height of McCarthyism, when Hollywood was caught in a wave of political paranoia. Taking the role would have meant supporting a film designed to spread fear. She wanted no part of that. Turning down major films wasn't easy. In an industry where actors were expected to follow the studio's orders, refusing a role could mean losing future opportunities. But Trevor wasn't willing to compromise. She preferred films that gave her creative freedom. In Borderline, 1950, she took on a more unconventional role that allowed her to explore a different side of her acting abilities. She made choices based on artistic integrity rather than chasing fame or fortune. By the late 1980s, Claire Trevor had fully retired from acting, ending a career that lasted more than 50 years. Her final role was in the 1987 television film Norman Rockwell's Breaking Home Ties. Though she had left the screen, she made rare public appearances. One of the most memorable was at the 70th Academy Awards in 1998. That night, she was honored for her contributions to cinema, a reminder of the impact she had left on Hollywood. Her performance in Key Largo, 1948, had won her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, and her reputation as the Queen of Film Noir still held strong. She had a way of playing characters who were both tough and vulnerable, leaving a lasting impression on audiences. Even in her final years, she carried herself with grace. Though she lived a quieter life, the industry had not forgotten her. After stepping away from Hollywood, Trevor found peace in Newport Beach, California. She spent her time painting and traveling, but she also stayed deeply involved in philanthropy. Her greatest passion was supporting arts education. She formed a close connection with the University of California, Irvine's School of the Arts, which was later renamed the Claire Trevor School of the Arts in her honor. She visited often, mentoring students and sitting in on rehearsals, always encouraging creativity. To her, the arts were not just a career but something that could shape lives. She even donated her Oscar and Emmy Awards to the school, where they remain on display as a tribute to her legacy. On April 8, 2000, Claire Trevor passed away at the age of 90 due to respiratory failure. She had just celebrated her birthday a month earlier. Her death marked the loss of one of Hollywood's last links to the Golden Age. Her stepson, Donald Bren, described her as a special woman whose lifelong passion was to bring joy to others. But her later years had not been without sorrow. In 1978, she lost her only son Charles in a tragic plane crash. Just a year later, her husband Milton Brennan passed away. These losses weighed heavily on her, but she remained strong, focusing on the causes she cared about. Claire Trevor's influence did not end with her passing. Her name lives on through the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, and her performances continue to be studied and admired. She may have left the stage, but the impact she made on film and education remains. Her story is one of talent, resilience, and generosity, a legacy that will not be forgotten.